All right, looks like you're up first, Justin, or you're up.
Yeah, I'm pulling the changes up, and um, so three different kinds of changes. Will you stop with the books? Come on, it's like wrecking all of my books. I'm trying to distract her, and the other cat's being no help at all. So let me share this. So three different changes across three different domains. I posted one of them already to the channel with the sage grouse. We can talk about that in a second. So this was from the overall EPA topics page, and they removed this environmental health resources for community members. And this page, there is a Wayback Machine link to it, because right now it just goes to like access restricted. But I haven't seen anything else with this particular page, but it does seem to have a substantial amount to it. And as soon as the internet loads up, come on, internet archive. So environmental data, like lots of different links on here. Like it's such a large page that it makes me think like this is a temporary thing or something like that. But I'm going to monitor this over the next cycle of changes. I checked now and it's still not up. But I just wanted to bring this to folks' attention to see if they heard anything about some stuff like this coming down or anything like that. So that's the first one. Any thoughts? Yeah, Liz. Or Gretchen.
Go for it, Gretchen.
The only thought I have is I recently saw that the Office of Sustainable and Healthy Communities was getting, it was either changing its name or being absorbed by something that was not related, didn't have a clear relationship to that in my mind. And I know that the National Program for Sustainable and Healthy Communities on the research side is getting shuffled, so I don't know about the programmatic side or the policy side. That office was usurped or changed names, and on the research side, I know it's getting kind of shuffled and responsibilities are being redistributed. So I don't know if it's related to, if this community health is related to either that program or that office. But if so, it could be part of that.
Liz?
Yeah, this is a really annoying question, which you probably can't answer, so it's more of a suggestion. It could be that they've just reshuffled what they call header pages like this, and so this has all been subsumed into something else that's vaguely similar. I saw something similar with, I think, Office of International and Tribal Affairs, where they just took down one header page, but it turned out that they just added a couple of menus to another header page, and so everything was still accessible. They just shuffled how it appears. So there was no longer the same front page, but the same information was appearing just in a different frame. It would be very hard for you to figure out if that was what was happening. Just, it's a suggestion.
Something Jason Sherman mentioned today as kind of a goal, you know, maybe it could be a goal on the dev side, in coming months, is to be able to do a text, like a keyword search for in the text of the pages that are in the database. And I wonder if this would be a case where like something like that would be useful, where we could search in the database for that phrase and then see where else it came up.
Yeah, super doable. We have to reevaluate how urgent getting away from Versionista is, which was once like pants on fire urgent because we didn't have any money, versus adding cool stuff like this. Because adding cool stuff like this, low hanging fruit, but we've been like trying to keep ourselves focused on the sort of harder and less fun problem of weaning ourselves off of Versionista. So I don't know. I guess that's a big question of how much of this stuff to prioritize. But that sounds like a super interesting one that maybe should be prioritized. I think to the previous comment about finding whether information has been moved to a different frame, not 100% sure I followed that, but I think the challenge there is figuring out has something been moved because it's sort of being buried, or something been moved just because it's moved, and that seems almost impossible to tell because two people could disagree about that. A machine could never do it.
Yeah, and that's
you could hope for is like a visual aid that says, "Hey, look over here."
Yeah, and that's where it's like, I think the next step will be to dig through those links and see how many of those sites are active, and then if they're still active, what's the? She's going after the cat. How, if those are all like hidden, essentially, if there's no way into them or things like that. So I'll dig through some of those links and report back. It's a ruckus here. So this other one was a bunch of removals of information around recycling and sustainable materials management. So a lot of this earlier information from 2014 was taken down, and then some specifics. These are mostly still there, but again, I haven't seen something like this changed before, and so like, I don't know if even the 2014 fact sheet is still there. But yeah, so something so it's still, this just goes to like the old data tables and fact sheets. So all the stuff is still there, it seems, but it was just a large enough removal of information that I thought it warranted getting brought to the larger group. Thoughts?
I'm trying to see how much of it is about like recycling aluminum versus anything else. Just because of the aluminum tariff.
It just says MSW. So, but we can look through the reports for that. But I'll I can dig in on some of this stuff too. But this was, as long as all this information was still there, still accessible in some form. I haven't dug into it too deeply, but I'm guessing most of this stuff is in some report. So,
that's weird.
Okay. So the last one is what I've been tracking for the last few months, which is the sage grouse changes. And so a big change with these was the removal of all of the pages, and all 11 of them have been removed, that detailed the state sage grouse efforts, which had already been changed back in May and June, to reflect whatever is going on, like the reopening of, or decisions, lawsuits, et cetera, et cetera. Still trying to get a handle on that. I might reach out to some folks in the Science to Action group to get an overview of that. I mean, I've sort of the broad picture of like Trump administration wants to open up protected lands to mining and drilling. Like I know that's the general story, but and then some language change around like cooperating at the state level versus sage grouse efforts, and so shifting the language more towards like state management versus coordinated federal management. So I've worked on a report on this, and I can continue to do that. I think at some point we were sort of waiting to get a little better handle on where all of this stuff is, and sort of where this could be playing out in the larger narrative of the lawsuits and decisions. But if it's time to just put the changes out there and say this is happening, I'm willing to do that as well. So thoughts?
I feel like the sage grouse is at a point of like warranting its own report. Like this seems like such a big change that even like this alone could, and that the whole like list of everything you've got. And it's timely. Like I think if we wanted, it's really timely with the Endangered Species Act also. And that whole like I think there's like visibility on these conservation issues right now. So I think it might be worth it to to prioritize. What do you guys think?
Three thumbs up. Okay. Okay. I'll start putting some stuff into the format. Like I've got a lot of this already sort of started, so but we'll get it more formalized this week.
Awesome. And definitely we'll let everyone on report team know like where to support. Yeah, this I'd never even heard of the sage grouse before.
Yeah. I've seen a few different articles of like this like chicken like animal is the big proxy for endangered species out west. Like, they've been fighting about this. I mean, this is a long-standing conflict, and so I was reading a little bit of the history this morning. So, but yeah, like this is happening. Let's get it documented and out there beyond our Google Drive.
This feels like the darkest timeline of Parks and Rec.
I thought that was Community.
It could be both together.
Oh.
Cool. Stop screen sharing.
Let's see. Are there any other important changes to note? Cool. Well, those were 3 interesting ones. So I wanted to return to this, what's our path moving forward with regards to classification? And it looks like, only 4 folks, actually, I don't know that that's true, but the highest in the voting on those 5 options, the highest one received 4 votes, since the 5th thumbs up is just the one for creating the icon, the little buttons. So that's not a large percentage of us. And so I kind of, I want to make sure that people are on board, but I also want to move on to that structure. If people like I personally think that it's a good move to make. And so do you all have thoughts on like if this number two, sorry, the number, here, I'll copy paste this as the this is the one that received the highest votes. Tape and pasting it into the notes doc. Do you guys see that?
Gretchen, what's the difference between option 2 and option 5?
Let me look. The difference between option 2 and option 5 is which like classification scheme we use. So the option 5 is keeping the same scheme that we have in terms of like, you know, the columns with 1 to 12 and then with 1 to 6 and the 1 to, you know, like, you know, a date, 1 is date, 2 is text, 3 is image, 4 is link, you know, those columns. And then number 2 is, let's see, this spreadsheet.
Sorry, I'm still blindly looking for the numbers here. Where I see the minutes, I see something got italicized while you were speaking with number 2 next to it.
Sorry, the numbers, the numbers 2 and number 5 are in the Slack channel.
Oh, the Slack channel. Okay.
Sorry.
No worries.
Yeah, I did a voting.
Oh, here we are. Okay, yeah, you can see I'm still catching up. Okay, carry on.
So the and I can drop this link into the chat here too. So number 2 is to move over to the scheme in this doc that or this Google Sheet that I just linked in the chat, where it you know, focuses on there's a couple of columns for the type of change, be it a language change, content change, like links or page removal, and then the scale of the change, if it impacts just, you know, a small portion of the, or like, you know, one section of a page, if it impacts a whole page, or like is more, you know, multiple pages, and then goes through the top, you know, the kind of the topics of like what does this change relate to? Does it relate to the climate or like state, you know, or like cooperation? I can't remember what word we used for cooperation, but, you know, relations, I think we called it. You know, state relations, like, so the sage grouse would be like, you know, conservation and, you know, state federal relations. So it goes through those as well. And but the similarity between option, you know, voting option number 2 and voting option number 5 is that both of those would, you would only actually go through the classification for what you deem important changes. And so all the changes that are just, you know, kind of web maintenance type stuff, you'd like copy and paste into your analyst sheets to kind of help you keep track that, like, yes, I've looked at those, but not take the time to say like, okay, you know, this, there's a change here, or, you know, this, yes, this, no, this, yes, you know, just to try to streamline it so we have more capacity to work on reports and other sorts of analyses. So that's the main, that's the difference between those two. Hey, Kevin.
Hey, buddy, are you back? Oh, he's wigging out.
He's frozen and looking very pensive.
Sometimes Kevin's so stoic and pensive in real life that it can be hard to tell. Like,
There he is.
Yay.
About that.
um, so are there any further thoughts about the classification on if people feel comfortable? So we talked last week, and there's notes all in the Slack channel and in last week's meeting notes of like, the points that were brought up and discussed in terms of like, what are we potentially gaining? What are we potentially losing? What are issues we need to address no matter what classification scheme we use? But so if we do move over to this new classification scheme and focus on only actually categorizing important changes, do at least those of us on the call feel comfortable with that?
Yeah, I don't think we'll lose much if we start ignoring like repeated changes. Like some of my pages, I'll have like the same kind of change each week. Like it'll update job staffing, or it'll update the blog, and just ignoring those would be useful and easier to manage.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'd like to echo something I said a couple of weeks ago, I think when Gretchen first raised this, but it was a different cast of characters on the call. I think the risks of turning this off are extremely low, and the costs of investing our time in this are extremely high. We've done almost no analysis to my knowledge using this data, so we don't know if we're investing people's time in writing down the right things that are actually going to be useful for automated filtering. And if we find out that we correctly guessed exactly what we needed, we can always go back and do this analysis again on old data, in some way. But I strongly suspect the best use of our time is to do something like number 2, and then, be more aggressive once we know what we actually want, assuming that the goal for this is to automate things later.
Yeah, I echo that. Okay, well, I really think that that this is will be beneficial, and I think it'll also be somewhat. I think the classification scheme hopefully we will think works really well. That the people who like Sarah Rubino and Justin Derry who piloted it, and then I know Marcy and Jake have used it a bit, and everyone said that it did more easily represent what they were seeing, or they found a way to articulate through these columns, more what they were truly seeing. So I hope that we find it useful. We can always iterate again. It's meant to be kind of, open to making sure that we're zeroing in on the best approach. And I think that using sheets for it will be somewhat short term, as I know that annotations in Scanner are not far off. If that becomes, I think that is the priority, and so it actually will be, I think, even better because we can start using, instead of like columns for topics, when we start doing it in the Scanner database, we could use tags, which would just, I think as far as like the research side goes, would just be a lot easier to kind of funnel in order to analyze sets of data, subsets of data, because you're not looking at like, okay, is this topic, it could be in any one of these columns, and try to funnel by multiple columns at the time. So I think that could be cool, but I think that so we can test out the scheme for a few weeks before it would be like implemented into Scanner, and then eventually transition onto actually doing our annotations in Scanner and using that as our interface, which would be awesome. Okay, well, so I'll make, I also am committing, and I don't know how quickly this will get done, but I am committed to recategorizing our existing 1,600 change important changes doc into the new scheme, so we can do analyses, because I do think that that's a lot of really important data. So again, yeah, no promises on how quickly that will get done, but that's.
But it might make sense not to start until we do analysis on the stuff that you've done this way and find out what's useful and what's not, because I could see us iterating on this more than once.
That's true. That's a good point. I've already started to do a subset just out of curiosity for some of the research stuff, but
No harm.
yeah, 1600 is like, whoa, that's going to take some time.
I also like the phrase "inspiration is perishable." If you're feeling motivated to do it, you do
it. True.
Until you hit the perishable part. And then you're like, oh, Nelly, okay.
Like, and that went bad. Time to shove that to the back of the refrigerator. Okay, well, I will make a new important changes doc that can be used to template your. Actually, wait. Let me think. I'm trying to remember if the analyst sheet that we email out, does that have like all the columns, or that just has the front portion? Sorry, that was not articulate. I'll make sure that people have that people's can fill out their analyst sheets in this new categorization scheme, starting this upcoming week.
Yeah, there's a template that we just add tabs to for each domain. So you just need to make a new template, and we'll need to make new analyst sheets. That's fine.
Okay. Okay, awesome. I'll do that so we can start doing it this way. And I'll make note of that. I'm super excited. I think this is going to be good. All right. Oh, and bye, Dan. Okay. Great. The next topic, just as a quick update from today, we had a meeting. It was supposed to be with like the research team and dev folks to kind of talk about like various ideas. It was pretty small, but I think really useful. One of the main points was the dev folks are super like. Actually, Kevin, you were there. Do you want to give a rundown? I have my notes in the agenda here, but I'm tired of hearing myself talk.
Let's see. I guess the main point, because there was actually like more dev people than research people, and I think the main sentiment was that we just want to support the research people as much as possible, make their lives easier in whatever way possible. And I guess, and then one of the things that came up was that the tag system. So instead of the drop down that Gretchen mentioned, you could just assign tags ad hoc, so you could create them on the fly as you needed to categorize things, and then we would create tools to help people deduplicate that, so you're not adding like all different like versions of water, like capitalized water or all lowercase water. Like make sure there's not that crazy like jumble of too many tags. And I think, and then the other thing was working on a way for the analysts or like researchers to search the text of changes, because that was brought up. I think just like Justin Shell like had this change, and then like Rob was really inspired by that, like trying to create more ways that the app could facilitate research. But because most of the devs don't have a lot of time to follow along with the research, so we weren't sure like what other outputs that you guys wanted to make. So we're just like, it would have been really nice to have like a lot more research people there to help carry the conversation along. Anything else, Christian?
I think that's mostly it. That's using Scanner as an interface, as the database, is not far off, and that there are some other really cool features that I didn't know were possible that sound like they're not far off either. So that'll be great, and I look forward to that sometime probably this fall.
I have a question about the tags. I just based on experience working, I was at a museum that thought it would be great to have all the curators describe everything with tags, because that's what people were doing, in social media. They were tagging things. So the curators were, the educated subset who would actually tag things, quote unquote, correctly. And what happens when you have an uncontrolled vocabulary is you run into a variety of issues that, like Kevin mentioned, capitalization issues or typographical error issues. You also run into issues of, I think it's called synonymy and polysemy. One of them is a case where you would have a word like turkey. And are you talking about the country or are you talking about the bird? And then another would be two different, I guess it would be the opposite of that. But there are just sort of several considerations. So, it's sort of the way things work is, people do tag things. But I guess my question would be, in the case of both museum, in the museum, I was the person who would go into the database, and the developer had created a GIF from Spider-Man, with great power comes great responsibility, because I would be going in and making lots of batch edits. But I was going through and reviewing and trying to kind of place some kind of control on these keywords so that they would actually be useful rather than cluttered. So would there be that kind of an option, say, for somebody to be able to access the back end of that? Or would that be purely like a developer thing? Or is this something that we're not concerned with?
I would say, so the tag things just came up today. And I would say, like, if that's a useful feature, that we would totally consider it. And like, so yeah, given that input, we would totally consider it. We're not really close to that yet, and so we were just throwing out ideas. But the more input people have like that, that's great. Like I can totally see that would be a feature we consider. But we just came up with the idea today.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. That's what I get for hopping halfway in.
No, I had sort of the same response, because my last experience with tagging was such a mess, where it was like, in order to describe particulate matter, it was like PM, particulate matter, particle pollution, and it like silica, dust. Like it was such a horrible experience. But I'd be really interested into a very limited vocabulary, like where you wouldn't actually ad hoc tag things, but you would have a selection of tags to choose from.
Yeah, and if that's the case, I'm sure I'm not as familiar with them working in the particular cultural heritage sector that I'm in, but I'm sure you would be more familiar with the types of vocabularies that are used to describe, scientific, to describe sciences, for example. I'm sure that there are vocabularies that are out there. Maybe some of them even have like URIs and stuff like that, but it's something that we could definitely investigate and see if we could sort of plug in. So I'd be happy to, if that's a road that you go down, I'd be happy to do some research for you.
Yeah, Kevin?
I was just gonna say, I think the main thing we want to do is allow researchers to be able to filter and sort results, diffs and changes by either tags or text within it. So that's like the main like feature that we want to add. So whatever way it is to make it less cumbersome and more useful for everyone, like we'll try to do our best. But like I said, this conversation just happened today, so it's all brand new, and the more input we receive from people, the better, and that's great. His concerns were, yeah, Gretchen had mentioned in the meeting as well.
Awesome. Okay. Well, glad for. I think it is looking like there are some interesting things on the horizon, and I'm glad that we have a lot of people with different experience to be able to hopefully like learn from different fields, dabblings in different things in order to make sure we're on a good path and not spend, reinvent the wheel. Last week I didn't, we kind of ran out of time before I reported back from the All Edgy meeting where we did, where we talked about like coding or kind of our like, our topics list and the kind of themes that the interviewing group is looking for when they code their transcripts. And I wanted to share the interviewing team's code book, which is linked here in the agenda. There's like actually a lot of overlap with what we've put in the topics in this new categorization scheme. And I really do think that there is a lot of room for collaboration. And I just saw in the interviewing team's channel, which is hashtag EPA_conversations, I think, that Leif and Sarah Donofrio are doing research into looking at the reorganization of EPA and EPA enforcement. And I know that Sarah Rubin has been watching, the EPA Office of Enforcement and Compliance web page or website, and so I just think then that there's potentially a lot of room for collaboration there. That especially because I know that Sarah Donofrio is actually using Internet Archive to look at. I'm not sure. I don't remember exactly which, or she's looking into the reorganization. I guess just to see. Maybe about the about pages, but I think that we are still monitoring those. And so anyway, I just think there's a lot of room for collaboration there. And any collaboration that other folks are interested in pitching. It sounded like that group was super welcoming of ideas on like ways we can work together, and I think it could be a really interesting thing to have kind of a combination of looking, how we've been looking at the public presentation of what's going on, and they've been looking at what's happening on the inside of the agency, and kind of have that kind of dual perspective on an issue. I think could be really fascinating. So if anybody has any thoughts, it seems like they're really open to collaboration. And Justin's pro collaboration too. And another thing that somebody on the call, I think it was Sarah Donofrio, brought up is they're also interested, a theme that they've been seeing a lot in their interviews is this like concern around the corporatization and like kind of not just, I guess it's mostly like just pro-business, but also kind of like they're curious about the language changes people have been using, even in the way people talk in their interviews that are kind of like more business oriented.
Everybody's a stakeholder. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. And
energy
and efficiency. And there were some other keywords that she mentioned that I hadn't even really thought of as like business words, but they are. And so I thought that could also be a just like grounds for collaboration with some of the language changes we've seen. And
yeah, my students found a bunch of sites on EPA regional websites talking about like Superfund sites where they added language to talk about the economic value that the site was now generating and how many jobs it was supporting. So that's definitely up that alley.
If you
yeah,
haven't
for
seen it
sure.
before, I recommend you go to the link that I posted in the chat. It's a really great, hilarious like takedown of business speak in the form of dictionary.
And second. That's awesome. What do you guys think would be a good way to like keep our brains open and on for, you know, collaboration ideas, and would like a shared brainstorming doc help, or is that like just another doc, or
I think because it's sort of nebulous at this point in terms of like what it could actually be. I think part of it would maybe go into some of the research, like the sort of the text analysis stuff. Because I think if we could start seeing some connections, or at least looking for some connections between language changes in the sites and, you know, the EPA interviews, and maybe even some stuff with the science to action things, like what people are seeing there, and sort of building this sort of web through that. But I guess it just feels so nebulous and abstract at this point. Like so if we had a few of those things, but it also requires some infrastructure that we may not have right now. But just even just running some keyword searches through some of the things that Eric's run or so sort of built up from the interviews could be a first step.
Yeah, I mean, Gretchen, I think if you want to encourage collaboration, I agree with Justin that it's kind of nebulous right now. So for me, like the way that I would do that organizationally is have a reminder like to you every month or so in your calendar, and just say like check in with interviewing team and ask if there's like topics that they want us to talk about in our meeting. Because like I wouldn't have realized that the interview team was interested in corporatization unless you had talked to them at the Ology meeting and brought it up. And like ideally we all talk to each other and go to these meetings anyway, but you know, it helps to have the structure around it if you like really want to foster that.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Okay, I think that's a great idea. I'll follow up on that. Awesome. That's let's see. Okay, team updates. From the research team, we're meeting again this Friday. So 2 Fridays ago we met, and Eric gave a little tutorial on how to do his text analysis, or his term analysis, which was great. And I will find the links to his like GitHub repo, where he's also like storing some of the instruction docs. It does take, I think there's like more instruction necessary to be able to do it kind of like from scratch. But and if you're not comfortable in like writing code and stuff like that, which I'm not, but it's good stuff. And then the report writing team, Sarah, do you want to give an update from report writing?
I was a bit late, but we did actually talk about sort of, I found a really interesting meeting because it was sort of a point in evolving how people are approaching or maybe approaching in the future the practice of our process of writing a report. We've kind of created structures for different two buckets, 2 categories of reports: an access change report and a content change report. And we are now in the midst of Marcy's working on a report that actually features both. One is not predominant. And so we had a good discussion about how those kind of structures and practices can be helpful, but also where they may be kind of artificial and conventions that we, if they're going to hinder our ability to accurately communicate changes, then we should not be beholden to them. So I think that there's a bunch of documentation review that will need to take place, but I think it really is a kind of freeing and empowering conversation for people who are in the midst of report writing. I don't know, Gretchen, do you want to add to that?
No, I think that's a good overview, and we also talked about what reports that are on deck that we want to move forward, especially to be timely. And one is sage grouse for sure, of especially with the Endangered Species Act, and then the other is the Migratory Bird Treaty Act. It was a change that Aaron Lemelin saw a while ago, and Marcy's working on the report. But both of those just are so timely right now. I kind of want to focus on those. But yeah, to Sarah's point, also kind of lowering the barrier to entry, not lowering the bar of quality or anything, but lowering the barrier to entry to doing a report, I think is going to be really helpful, and making sure that we have structures that actually are supporting the changes that we're finding and our ability to communicate about them. Awesome. And then the last update, the dev update, this is just from last week, that I don't know if it was Jason or Rob filled this in. Kevin, do you know?
I don't. I was on vacation for the last 3 weeks, so I haven't been able to catch up what's been happening.
Oh, I know what these mean though. Okay, the changes should now show up in a single sheet. I think that means that they did away with that duplication for when there was the same page in multiple domains, and they were like, hey, this is in this domain and this domain, and I think they deduplicated that, so now it should just go into one of those domains, which is
yeah,
great.
that sounds right for that one.
Okay, awesome. And the only other thing on the agenda is thinking about maybe doing a Sunday night social sometime, a non-edgy related hangout. But Julia is not here.
I'll text her and ask if she'd be willing to plan another one.
Oh, that does explain that, Liz. Awesome. Justin, you said that you'd see Julia? Awesome. Are there other things on people's minds? All right, it's 9:26. That's awesome. Okay, well, so action items, I will make a new template for changes, and we'll be off to the races with the new categorization scheme. And Justin, we're totally available for support in any way with the report writing, and wherever if you want to hand anything off, if you feel great about running with it, either way. All those things.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Awesome. All right. See you guys soon.
Bye.
Good night,
Thank you.
everyone.
Good night.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.